15 years ago, spring break was the only thing on my mind. My mom cleaned houses for people who lived behind iron gates, and sometimes she'd bring me or my older sister along. There was this one place, 3 stories, all stone and glass, tucked at the end of a road that just dissolved into woods. The couple who owned it, the Bransons, had no kids, but they had a pool that looked like it belonged in a magazine. I remember the driveway sloped down so you couldn't see the street from the front door. It always made the house feel cut off, like it didn't want to be found. Inside, the floors were always cold, stone underfoot, rugs that never quite warmed up. The Bransons decorated with these old masks, Native American mostly, hung on the walls next to framed airline memorabilia. It was the kind of place where you always felt watched, even if you were alone. The windows ran floor to ceiling, so in the daytime you'd see nothing but green and water and sunlight bouncing off the pool. At night, you just got your own reflection floating in black glass. The Bransons had 2 dogs. Samson, a golden retriever built like a sandbag, barely moved unless you had food. Sadie was the new one, a husky mix with a jaw that never unclenched. She'd bark at her own shadow, tear up the couch if left alone, and if you tried to leave her outside, she'd clear the fence and vanish. The Bransons started paying my sister and me $20 an hour just to sit with them when they went out. It was easy money, as long as you didn't mind Sadie pacing holes in the rug. That Easter weekend, the Bransons left town and asked my sister to stay both nights. I spent the first night with her because the house felt too big for one person. We watched movies, ate microwave popcorn, and let the dogs climb onto the couch. The only thing that bothered me was the way Sadie would stare at the windows after dark, ears up, like she was waiting for a signal. I kept the lights on. When I left the next morning, I remember the air in the foyer felt heavier than usual. My sister laughed it off, said I was being dramatic. My sister called me that afternoon, said the dogs were calm and she was going to work out in the basement. The gym was all stone, with a treadmill facing a wall of glass that looked out over the pool. She put on the 10 Commandments, the same movie the Bransons watched every Easter. She said the treadmill's belt made her feel like she was running in place, stuck in this box of glass and stone, with nothing but trees pressing in. I'd never thought about it that way before. She told me later she heard the alarm beep, the one that goes off when a door opens. She stepped off the treadmill, sweat cooling on her arms, and saw the sliding glass door was open 2 inches. That door was heavy. You had to really shove it. She said the dogs didn't move, just watched her, like they were waiting for her to decide what to do. She convinced herself she'd left it open, that the beep was the TV, or maybe the treadmill safety key. She shut it, locked it, and went back to running. She told me she kept checking the lock every few minutes, running her thumb over the latch, listening for the click. But the more she tried to ignore it, the more she started noticing little things. A draft on her calves, the treadmill's motor running uneven, the TV flickering like it was losing signal. She said her jaw started to ache from clenching. I asked her why she didn't just call me back. She said she didn't want to sound paranoid. She finished her workout, but said she couldn't shake the sense that she was being watched. She checked every lock in the house, front door, side door, even the little window in the laundry room. The Bransons never gave her the alarm code, so all she could do was double-check the deadbolts. She showered, locked herself in the guest room with both dogs, and tried to fall asleep with the TV on low. She told me later her tongue felt like dry velvet. She couldn't remember if she'd brushed her teeth. She woke up hours later, both dogs pressed against the door. Sadie was growling, but that wasn't new. Samson, though, He never made a sound, not even when the mailman came. She said his whole body was rigid, head low, teeth showing. She sat up, heart hammering, and tried to listen. The only thing she could hear was the dog's breathing and the TV static. Then came the beep. The same door alarm, 2 short notes from somewhere downstairs. She called my dad. I could hear her voice through the wall, raw, scraping, not even words at first. He told her to hang up and call the police. She did. She told me later her hands felt like they belonged to someone else. She dialed wrong the first time. The next thing she knew, she was opening the door and both dogs exploded out, claws scraping the hardwood, howling. She ran behind them, feet slipping, eyes not adjusting fast enough. The house was all sharp edges and reflections. She said every window looked like a mouth. She made it to the front door just as my dad pulled up, headlights washing the stone steps. She said her lungs burned. She didn't remember grabbing her shoes. My dad came in with his old revolver, checked the kitchen first, then the stairs. The police pulled up right after, lights bouncing off the glass. They found the back gate open, the sliding door in the basement unlocked again, just barely, like it had been forced and snapped back. The lock was scratched. Nothing was missing. No footprints, no broken glass. The only thing out of place was a strip of torn carpet by the treadmill, like something heavy had been dragged across it. The officers said the Bransons had called them a few weeks earlier. The husband had gotten a threat at work, something about layoffs, angry pilots, nothing specific. They'd told the police, but not my sister, not us. My dad asked why someone would break in and not take anything. The cop just shrugged. He said, "Sometimes people just want to scare you." That's all he said. My sister never went back. The Bransons moved out a few months later. I still think about that strip of carpet, the way it was peeled up at the edge, like someone had tried to dig their way out. I drive past that street sometimes. The house is still there. The glass always looks dark, even in daylight.
My friend Jamie and I both went to St. Michael's, so we always got the Monday after Easter off. That year, 1996, we were 9. 4th grade, old enough that our parents didn't hover, not in a town like ours. Jamie's house sat right where the fields started, but you could walk to the library if you wanted. I remember that part because, even now, it's hard to line up what happened with the place I thought I knew. Jamie's room was upstairs, tucked under the eaves, the kind where you have to duck a little to get to the bed. We'd fallen asleep late, whispering about horses and what we'd do with the day off. I kept thinking about the way the house creaked, not in a scary way, just the usual expansion and settling. I'd gotten used to it. Jamie's terrier, Scout, snored at the foot of the bed. I remember the sound because it was the only thing that broke the quiet. The sun was just starting to hit the glass when I woke up. It was that thin, gray light that makes you think you've got more time to sleep. I remember the way the sheets felt. Stiff from line drying, not like the ones at home. I could hear birds, maybe a tractor on the road. I didn't know yet that anything was wrong. I heard something. Not a creak, not the dog. It was a dull, rhythmic thud, like someone slamming a heavy boot into plywood. My body went stiff, but my mind tried to fit it into the usual catalog. Maybe Jamie's mom was home early. Maybe a horse had gotten loose and kicked the back door. I kept waiting for a voice, for the sound to make sense. Scout went tearing down the stairs, nails scraping the wood. He barked, sharp, frantic, not the kind of bark he used on squirrels. The thudding stopped. For a second, I thought maybe it was over. Then there was a yelp, high and cut short, and Jamie's hand found my arm. I could feel her pulse through her skin. Jamie whispered that maybe it was her brother, home early. I wanted to believe her. I tried to listen for the sound of keys, for the way her brother always stomped his boots at the door. But the house was wrong, too quiet, except for the sound of someone moving downstairs. Heavy, deliberate footfalls. I kept telling myself it was a misunderstanding. That was the last time I believed it. Jamie reached for the phone, her fingers shaking so hard she dropped it once. She tried to dial her mom, but I pressed her hand and mouthed, "Call for help." I remember the way the plastic felt, slick and too warm. The operator's voice came through, low and measured, asking for our address. Jamie's voice was thin, barely more than a breath. I tried to keep quiet, but I could feel the blood pounding in my ears. We crawled into the closet, knees pressed against old shoes, the air thick and sour. I tried to slow my breathing, but every inhale caught on something. Dust, fear, I don't know. Jamie kept the phone pressed to her ear. The operator told us to stay put, to be quiet. The sound downstairs kept going. Drawers opening, a chair scraping tile. I counted the seconds on my fingers, but I lost track after a while. My jaw ached from clenching. The sound changed. Footsteps, faster now, coming up the stairs. I pressed myself so far back into the closet wall that my shoulder blades scraped the plaster. The air went thin. I couldn't hear Jamie breathing anymore. The operator's voice was still there, but it sounded like it was coming from the bottom of a well. I don't know how long we stayed there. At some point, the footsteps stopped. The only sound was the phone, the faint static of the operator's breathing. I remember staring at the closet door, at a sticker peeling off the inside panel, a horse with one leg missing. My left hand was numb from being pinned under my knee. There was a new sound. Car doors, then boots on gravel, then voices, sharp and clipped. The operator told us to stay put, but Jamie was already halfway out of the closet. I followed, legs tingling, ears ringing. The hallway looked the same, but the air felt wrong, charged, like before a storm. We came around the corner and there they were. 5 officers, guns up, faces blank. For a second, I thought they were going to... I don't know, it's all static. One of them shouted, but the words didn't stick. Jamie's hand found mine again, and I realized I was shaking so hard my teeth hurt. The guns dropped. Someone guided us into the living room, voice low and steady, asking if we were hurt. The living room felt smaller with all those bodies in it. The TV was still on, some morning show flickering in the corner. I stared at the pattern on the rug, blue diamonds worn nearly white at the edges. Someone handed me a glass of water. My hands left wet prints on the glass. I kept waiting for Jamie's mom to walk in and tell us it was all a mistake. Later, one of the officers said it was a worker from the pool company, someone who knew the family's schedule. He kept saying the man was sorry, that he hadn't meant to scare anyone. I remember the way he wouldn't meet my eyes when he said it. I checked the kitchen door before we left. The frame was splintered, paint peeled back, as if the whole house had been pried open. I still remember the sound the door made when it gave way. Not just the bang, the way the whole frame seemed to sigh before it split. That's the part that comes back sometimes when the house is too quiet.
spent my 4th year of uni on exchange, which meant I landed in England with 2 suitcases and the kind of accent that made people ask me to repeat myself at the corner shop. The place they gave me was an old factory, red brick, 4 floors, a square with a hollowed-out courtyard in the middle. You could see the whole way across from any window if you cared to look. I remember the first time I hauled my bags up the metal stairs. The echo in the corridor made every step sound like I was being followed. That never really went away. Spring break, 2005. The local students all vanished home for Easter. Train tickets, family dinners, the works. I couldn't swing the airfare, so I had the whole flat to myself. 4 bedrooms, kitchen, 2 bathrooms, and not a single other voice bleeding through the walls. I thought it would be a relief. No one slamming doors at 3 a.m., no one burning toast or leaving their laundry in the machine for days. Just the mechanical hum from the old fridge and the distant clatter from the courtyard when a pigeon landed wrong. The building was chopped up into flats, each with 4 rooms. The only way between them, unless you went out into the courtyard, was through these heavy fire doors. They had wired glass windows, and they were supposed to stay locked unless you broke the seal or had a master key. If you forced one, an alarm would trip, or that was the theory. My room was right next to one of those doors. I used to hear people rattle it, just to see if anyone forgot to lock up. Never thought much of it then. That night, I watched a film on my old laptop. One of the only 2 DVDs I owned, so it was either Silence of the Lambs or Big Fish. Can't remember which. I shut everything down, drew the blackout curtains, and locked my bedroom door. The main entrance was bolted too. I remember double-checking, because the quiet was making my head ring. I told myself I'd finally get a full night's sleep. It was the kind of silence that presses in on your ears, the sort you only notice when you're used to noise. I lay there, trying to ignore the tinnitus buzzing in my head, counting the seconds between the fridge kicking on and off. At some point, I must have drifted off. The next thing I remember, I was awake, but my body hadn't caught up. There was a weight in the room. Not a sound, not a shadow, just a pressure, like the air was being compressed into the shape of a person. My jaw had locked so tight I could feel it in my molars. I didn't move. I kept telling myself it was a dream, or maybe the tinnitus had finally scrambled my sense of space. But I could feel, no, I knew, someone was standing right next to my bed. I tried to listen, but the ringing in my ears just got louder. Then, a faint light, not enough to see by, but enough to make out the edge of a shoulder, the curve of a back. Someone was there, holding a torch or maybe a phone, the beam pointed at the floor. I thought I could smell metal, or maybe it was just the taste in my mouth. I don't know how long I stayed frozen like that. Seconds, minutes. My hands felt welded to the duvet. I kept thinking, if I just waited, they'd leave. Or maybe I was still dreaming. That was the last time I tried to explain it away. I posed up on the bed and screamed. Not a word, just a sound, raw enough that my throat burned. The figure spun, just a blur, back-turned, and bolted for the door. I heard the fire door crash open. I lunged for my phone, nearly knocking it off the table, and fumbled with the lock. My feet hit the cold lino in the hallway. The flat door stuck for a second. My palm left a sweat print on the handle. I ran. No shoes, no plan, just bare feet slapping down the corridor. The security office was a fluorescent box at the edge of the courtyard. I burst in, tripping over the step. My voice was shot, but I managed to get out, Someone in my room went through the fire door. The guard looked at me like I'd asked him to call the Queen. He said the alarm never went off. I kept repeating it. The door, it was open. It was open. He followed me back to the flat, keys jangling. The fire door stood open, no alarm, just the faint smell of dust and old paint. He clicked it shut, then used his master key. Nothing. Not even a beep. He promised to get the engineer in the morning. I checked the CCTV with him. No one on the feed. No one in the courtyard. My hands were shaking so badly, I nearly dropped my phone. Back in my room, I dragged the desk chair against the door and left my phone in my hand. I stared at the gap under the fire door, waiting for the corridor light to flicker. The fridge kicked on, louder than usual. I couldn't tell if my ears were ringing or if it was just the old compressor. The next morning, the engineer found nothing wrong with the alarm. The fire door locked as it should. I still don't know how they got in, or if they ever left.